So welcome. My name is Sydney, and I'm glad you guys are here today. We have a lot of people online over here. So we have many people register. I think a lot of people are going to join that. So hopefully they can hear and see, or I'll try to be loud. So AI and humanitarian storytelling. Welcome. That's what we're here to talk about, and how like what's going on, right? There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of interesting things happening in the world, and this is not cutting out. And as a filmmaker myself, I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out the way forward. And when it comes to storytelling, obviously humans are still the storytellers, right? And we still have to get the story right. And that's my heart, that's my passion, is getting the human story right. And I think what, for me, we're going to introduce all of ourselves. And the one question that I have that will sort of answer is, what are we most excited about this new field of storytelling or using AI in it, and what gives us the most pause as people who are in this world. For me, the most exciting thing directly is being able to tell a story at any time at a high level very quickly, without having to spend $1 million to get a shot. I can get it very easily, and it can be real, and it can look realistic. It also gives me a lot of creative freedom. And more importantly than giving me creative freedom, it gives creative freedom to non-filmmakers who have stories to tell but don't have access. That's what makes me the most excited about AI and storytelling. What gives me the most pause is what I think gives a lot of people the most pause is fake stories. It's not real information, it's deception. And removing the human from the story, the humanity from it. That's what gives me the most pause. So, again, my name is Sydney. I live here, and I'm gonna move on. You're up. The microphone is there. You guys probably know this guy.
Thanks, Sydney. So my name is Benoit Carpentier. I work at the National Federation of Red Cross Societies, where we are hosted today. So I'm managing the digital communication and content team. Been here for quite a while, for 15 years, doing several things. But I started, and that's also why I'm interested in what's going on at the moment. I started my career 30 years ago, and in the field of special effects, which you could compare AI with special effects, technically. But that was really the beginning of the move from analog film photos to digital, a little bit, the really early beginning. So I participated, for instance, in the first full CGI movie in Europe. And that took us 6 years to produce. So we'll discuss how long it took to produce your film afterwards, but I don't think it took 6 years. But you can imagine how long, like in 6 years, already at the time, the change of technology between the moment you start to the moment you finish, the change of perception. Obviously, people can use more to digitally generated images. And already at the time, and there was a little bit probably less concern than that there is with AI at the time, because it was still computer generated, but created by humans, because the code, or the softwares that were used, were entirely controlled by humans. So you could say it was digital, but it was still kind of like controlled. Here, there's an element of non-control that is to answer your question of what makes you pose, that's one of them. I have a few of them, not just that one. Obviously, I haven't discussed it a bit more in detail. I have the whole ethics behind the use of AI generated content for humanitarian purposes. How does that replace humans, as you said? How do we translate emotion through something that is not real, for someone that is not real, that person? Now, what makes me excited about it is I can replace myself 30 years ago being very excited about being at the beginning of something that is going to really change the way we see things. And that was just computer generated images done by humans. So the power of what we have coming in the coming years is like probably 1 billion times more powerful than what we're seeing already at the time. But that's very exciting. So that comes with a lot of fears, but at the same time, creativity like is not really open. And as I agree with what you said, is that open to almost anyone, hopefully. That's another pose. Hopefully.
Good afternoon. My name is Gilles Reboux. I am at the World Health Organization in charge of Health for All Film Festival, which I designed and proposed to the Director General in 2019. And since then, he asked me to lead this project. We had one edition of the Health for All Film Festival every year since the first edition was 2020. And with good success, we had on average 1,000 submissions from 110 countries. So, and we managed so far to select more than 330 short films. So it's dedicated to short films. And the festival is really a mix of all types of films. So fiction, documentary, animation. Question that Lisa asked me to maybe to think about now is about what about AI creation? So we're going to answer a little bit about that later. Otherwise, my experience has been to be a producer, reporter myself on video reportage since 1986. So I have seen a lot of evolution of technologies in the video making world since then. And AI is another one coming in. So I have plenty of questions, a few ideas and answers so far, but I think we have more questions than answers because not too many experiences yet. Should I say one advantage or one risk, or did you want to start with just to launch some ideas? For it, so it's difficult to put any order in my questions, but we'll take one advantage first, to be positive on the first. You know, the film festival I created, the goal is really also to collect a maximum of stories from maximum of countries on any health topic, so that we can use all these stories for health education. And it's very important to me for WHO. It's part of the core mandate to work on health promotion, and that the film could contribute to health promotion, health education. And we know the power of storytelling. When you bring emotions with information, then people might remember better an information because they had an emotion when they received data. So the power of film for education, I think AI would certainly help us a lot to enhance that, to make it interactive with the audience, to make it to adapt the stories to how the audience would learn and analyze the different types of audience and so on. There are so many aspects that AI can certainly help a lot. And I foresee that there are plenty developments for that. On the risks and more challenge, I have many, as I said, but in mind, but one I would pick just to start the conversation would be the risk to lose mental capacity. Not in the audience maybe, but also for filmmakers to be a bit lazy. We know that human being, maybe we have a laziness, natural laziness. When something falls on our plate, fully made, we say, okay, that's fine, I just eat it and I don't need to think more. So yes, in terms of capacity to create, capacity to retrieve information, to check, double check to make sure there is no misinformation, no bias, and so on. So there are many things that AI will not do peaceful moment. But we should be careful about, and if we are too lazy, we might just take it for granted and just disseminate some things which are not very creative or which are full of misinformation. That's totally up for now.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, great. So my name is Lisa Russell. I'm an Emmy-winning filmmaker. But I didn't go to film school. I actually started my career getting my master's in public health and international health and landed my first job in a war zone in the late 90s in Kosovo and Albania. And it was there that I got a real up-close lesson on the importance of storytelling coming from the women who were affected by conflict and them not being happy with the stories that were being told about them. And this was a really important topic during the 90s and the Balkans and the wars in that region about trigger warning about rape being used as a tool of war. But these women in Kosovo did not want to be labeled as only women who've been victims of sexual violence. And that made me analyze the stories, the news, the films coming out of the UN space about development. And I thought we need to tell these stories better. And I was also a student of Jonathan Mann, if you're familiar of who he was, the first director of the World Health Organization AIDS program. He was a pioneer in looking at health as a human right. And that is the lens that I started to see stories through. So I joke, I didn't go to film school, but I spent like 3 years learning the craft. And for the last 20 years, I've worked as a contracted filmmaker for a lot of different UN agencies, NGOs, etc. Now, my relationship with AI filmmaking started International Women's Day 2 years ago. There was a press release by UN Women that was talking about gender bias in technology and in AI. And I was like, you know what, I want to make a film about this. I just want to figure it out. So I took the tools that I could find and I made this film that was like the women of AI descending on the United Nations to rewrite the charter, and all of this stuff. And I put it out and it generated a lot of conversations, especially among documentary filmmakers. So some of them were excited, asking me, how did you do this? And then some were really afraid. So I was very much introduced to this dichotomy of AI filmmaking early on. But my excitement about AI filmmaking is that even as an independent filmmaker, it's hard to get contracts, to get gigs, to get funding, to survive. It's not easy. And I felt so at any point, I can just sit at home and with my fingertips and my imagination, I can make films. I don't need funding. I don't need a producer. I don't need a camera even. I can make a film. And I edit my film. So I believe that this is an editor's medium. So if you are an editor, all you need to think about is what shots do I need? What shots do I need to tell this story? And so I really, really embrace it. Not only that, and I'm sorry, I'm taking too long, I'm gonna wrap up very quickly. But not only that, but I felt like I did when I discovered screenwriting, when I wrote my first fiction script. And that is, I work in this pretty serious environment with people's livelihoods on the line, but I could tell stories about the same topics, but not be confined by reality. With AI, I can tell a story 50 years from now in outer space, under whatever your mind can think of, you can tell a story. So for somebody who's like creative storytelling, it's a creative universe. Like I get excited when I think about all the things that I can potentially make stories about. The thing that I am most concerned about, or that gives me pause, and this is something I fight hard for in the UN space, is artist livelihoods. What's going to happen when all of these people start making films? And we do need them. Like we talk a lot that we need to hear from, voices on the front lines or from the indigenous communities, from people who are living these issues that we all are passionate about. But what happens to the professional filmmakers when there's an overabundance, which is already happening, has been happening? I don't know about you, but it's like harder and harder to get contracts. So what are we going to do to ensure that creatives are still able to live and work as creatives full time. So that's one of my positives, in addition to the environmental and the IP stuff, which we will, I'm sure, tap into. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm really excited. I'm a new Women in AI ambassador, and I'm here. I've released my film, AI for Good, but I am not Kenyan by birth, but I am now becoming Kenyan by my heart. And so I got stuck in East Africa during COVID. I now live in Mombasa, Kenya. So it is my great honor to introduce one of the most amazing advocates in technology and AI, and I don't even know how your team keeps up with you. This is Ambassador. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, your title, but Ambassador Philip Daigo, and he is the special envoy on technology for the president of Kenya. So this is a big deal. So I want him to say a few words, and please give a round of applause because I'm so honored.
Because of those folks, I guess. Online. I'll make it discreet. I don't need a seat. I don't need a podium. No, I think so. We met online. So next year. So we became friends. I call her my favorite Tom.
Yeah.
I think so. A couple of things, and the reason why I started engaging with Lisa, I think this conversation is that for the last about 1 year before I was appointed by His Excellency the President, I was actually appointed by the UN Secretary on his advisory body on AI. And so we were about 8 experts working towards shaping what we call this report that was going to define, and we call it AI for Humanity. And the idea was to figure out how do we shape this future, especially within the United Nations, that spoke about artificial intelligence within the context. And so beyond everything that we did, the one thing that we did not do very well was potentially looking at the part around creativity and artificial intelligence. And you can understand, because a lot of the focus was really about the governance of AI and broadly around the big arcs, right? Whether it's the data, whether it's a compute, whether it's talent, or whether it's the use cases, but not necessarily the element of creativity and intelligence. And so I think now, way into the report was published in the Global Digital Compact and then being appointed ambassador, I think being very clear around where I come from, being from a country of the global south, a lot of our expressions are actually artistic. And so when you talk about artificial intelligence in its abstract form, the way that we consume these technologies are throughout your phone, by everything that you have, is basically a cultural artifact. And the culturalness of it means it's out. And so I think it becomes very important right now to figure out that how do we ensure that the only way we consume AI is from a very and it's very much from. And so as I think I find this very important. I told this even if I'm doing anything else, I'm going to drop it. Because I think part of my arc or my journey around governance of AI, especially this year, has been how do we ground this in the reality of perspectives of those stakeholders. And so beyond the notions around using AI for time, is by the very fact of how do we ensure that the entire citizen is conscious about AI and its impact. And the only way you do it is actually through storytelling. And the way we do it through storytelling in our cultures is visual, it's oral. Beyond that also, it's very much around the very specifics of artificial intelligence. And for anybody who hear this, you hear about these large language models. The large language models are fine by themselves, but are not necessarily articulating how we engage in the global majority of the global south, because a lot of our languages are not written. They're very much oral. And so the large language model itself is oral. And so for us, the thinking around multi-modal models, because it's about the multiple applications or capabilities of models, voice, audio, visual. And so that's why we feel we need to spend our time. Because I cannot write in my native, but I speak it. And so how do we ensure that in the next iteration of building models, that we spend a little bit of time to capture those models in the way that we express ourselves? And so I think this is where we are spending a lot of our time, and I see it as one of the biggest. The other part, of course, has been that AI is concentrated amongst a few countries, a few companies, and a few people who are the front lines of artificial intelligence. That's why they call them frontier models, right? Because it's very much focused on frontier. Yet AI affects how we live, learn, work, engage everyone. So the only way we will ensure that everybody is part of this conversation is through it. And so I think for me, beyond the risks that are here around human agency, it's also the risks around people being left. And a few conclaves, conversations like this with very specific people who are very much on the frontiers of AI. But then those that it will impact, and I see you as very much the top, so the Emmys, you're the folks who are really at the top of the future. But think about the folks with flip phones trying to make films in smart. Where will they be if I can quickly generate a slam, right? A scene from a slam from the source of the new Google capabilities. And remember, it's generative. It means I'm generating it from sound, because AI doesn't, as you like. AI is not creative. I have this saying that AI is neither artificial or intelligent. If it was intelligent, we would be having this conversation right now. Right? Probably sitting somewhere telling us something. But I think the fact that it is generated is just not about taking possibilities or capabilities from people. It's also about ensuring that we valorize creativity and imagination. And so how do we ensure that through storytelling we can empower people to understand that generative AI, or companies that generate images, voice, audio from people, also have a responsibility to valorize or limit those we text it from, but also to ensure that we have people working with machines. Because you all said that AI has a place in society, but then it shouldn't be we delegate our agency. It should be to amplify what we do to sort of make us imagine even further. I do not need to go shooting the moon, but I can have a moonshot with me. So there has to be that, how do I say, the conversation between humans and machines. And so hopefully this is something that we will take forward. I'm happy to really see how we can support this, because part of our agenda, at least in the Continental Union, is to create jobs and opportunity. And where there is an opportunity for jobs and opportunity is creativity through digital economy. And so how we shape that particular space through ethics, through ensuring that machines and humans work together, but also ensuring that young people get their team based on how they collaborate with machines. I think is very important. And I think this is very important because I've not seen many of these discussions. So for those who are online and for those who are here, I think this is it is the beginning of a journey that is debate. And I think we need to support it more. So.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. Those were amazing words. And I also just want to follow up by sharing that there's a great quote that I love that is, the power of art is not only to allow us to learn about the world, but also to help us unlearn the biases that we are born into. And I swear, living in Kenya, I'm unlearning constantly. I'm lucky to work with a lot of really amazing young artists in Kenya and East Africa, and they are so excited about AI filmmaking and AI content creation. I hope that we can find ways to make it accessible and affordable, so that we can have more young people embracing it, especially young people and creatives, because they're really excited about it. With that said, do you need to leave? Oh, okay. I thought he was getting ready to speak. Okay, so next up, we're gonna show a couple of AI films. They're actually my films. I was hoping we would have other ones, but I figure if I'm showing them, if you have questions about production or anything like that, I can answer it. The first film we're gonna show is one that I produced for AI for Good. I was speaking on a panel around, the theme was, it's 2035 and we live in a world where we didn't properly take care of AI, it wasn't human centric, it wasn't whatever. Can you generate a film? And I was like, gave me 2 days to do it, but okay. So this premiered at AI for Good. This is the first one. And then the second one is a music video that premiered at COP29 in Azerbaijan. I'll give more context to that, but you can just go ahead and watch AI films. Oh, they can see it. They can see it.
Initializing transmission, linking to remaining satellites, power level stable, audio, armed, visual, muted, estimated reach, unknown. Signal integrity is holding. You're live in 3, 2, 1.
I don't know if anyone can hear this, but I have to say it anyway. To those orbiting your new homes, resettled in space, you left Earth. She is now depleted, drained. No life in the oceans, no breath in the mountains, no pulse in the soil. I stayed, not because I lost the fight, but because I loved what we could have become. 10 years ago, we stood at the edge of something new. A moment where AI and technology could have healed, preserved, cooled the burning sky. But you trained machines for profit, wired systems for war, chose speed over wisdom, control over care. I'm not here to blame you. Earth will survive. She always has. But what we lost was the story we could have written together. Of balance, of beauty, of intelligence with empathy. If this is the last message carried through static and starlight, let it be this. You can build 1,000 new worlds, but none will feel like home. We didn't need more code. We needed more conscience, more courage, more care. So if you're still watching, remember this planet not as a failure, but as your first teacher. She gave you breath. She gave you time. This is the last broadcast from Earth. Not a warning, not a plea, a memory. Carry her forward, and this time, do better.
Thank you. And just to give some context, I am collaborating and partnering with some incredible partners in Kenya, Posh IT in Ghana, Anna Cosmos Hub. We're now partnering with the Nelson Mandela Museum and Learning Like Mandela Institute to create curriculum to look at and explore AI creativity, but with a focus on values and leadership and values. So that's one. I'm also, I mentioned the Women in AI Ambassador who proudly helped me premiere this. The second film we're gonna watch is a music video that I did with an incredible Nigerian artist named AK Centric. He gave me a song and said, I have this song, I don't know what to do with it. I've seen your AI work, maybe we could collaborate on something. I listened to the song, his voice is like amazing. I said, this is you. And so he started singing a cappella to me. He's like, yes, it's me. I'm like, great. So I was like, well, I'm going to this COP29 climate change conference. Maybe we can figure out a climate storyline and let's see if we can do it together. Because I personally believe our climate storytelling sucks. I think climate storytelling is so bad. And finding new ways to talk about it, whether it's music videos, poetry videos, making videos that don't say the word climate change or triple planetary threat or loss and damage. We need more stories around climate that move people. So this was the result of that. You know what? No, that's the preview. I think you have the wrong video. It's this one. Watch the third one.
This one.
Yeah.
Sitting beside my window, watching the days go by, asking myself, when would it be? Sticking too many answers, asking if it's time to quit. Feel it coming, when would it be? Tears on my pillow, sand in my water. Deep in my head, when would it be? I've been through the fire, burning desire to keep getting higher. When would it be? Moving on, I still believe I'm holding on. I still be me. I'm moving on. I still believe I'm holding on. I still be me. I'm pulling all these stops out. I'm giving it my all now. And I will never fall now. I got my feet on the ground. I won't shake and I won't fall. I'll take my chances and risk it all. I blow my trumpet and beat my drums. Tears on my pillow, sand in my water, deep in my head. When would it be? I've been through the fire, a burning desire to keep getting higher. When would it be? Moving on, I still believe I'm holding on. I still be me. I'm moving on. I still believe I'm holding on. I still be me.
Thank you so much. And again, just to give a little bit more context. So the reason why there's a storyline about visa injustice is because I work with a lot of young climate advocates who could not come to the UN Summit of the Future because of visa issues. And so this was a story, again, it's climate related, it's visa injustice related. The song never mentions anything jargony that we're used to in this space. And I think because of that, you know, bringing climate stories into AI film festivals. It placed top 25 in this other thing. And these are contests, AI film contests that default to a lot of the same dominant narratives, which is the like, you know, the space and the robots and the whatever. But I feel that those of us that want to tell stories about climate or gender or global health, whatever it is, and you can find real storytelling ways to use AI, it gets our messages into other spaces besides the bubble that we oftentimes work in. So that's, yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. So having watched this, I want to open this up because we really want to have a conversation. That's kind of why we're all here. We have questions. You have questions. So who has a question about either what they've seen or this general topic?
Hi, Bijan. This is for Lisa. Amazing films. Thanks, Lisa. How long did it take you? Did you use free software? Is it accessible to anyone? And what skill level do you need to I mean, there's no coding involved, I guess, because it's AI.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So the second film we watched, I finished in October, And you can tell, I can tell the difference between the quality of AI, like the woman, you notice they're so glitchy, she doesn't look the same in shot by shot. That's how fast AI is moving. So that was done with Midjourney and Runway. Mostly, I also used, what else did I use for that one? I did use ChatGPT to help me with the story structure, but it's not, people ask me, especially for this first film, how long did it take you to make? I made it in one day, but that's not because of AI, that's because I've been a filmmaker for 20 years, right? So I do not use free tools. I teach on a platform that I built that's a lot more affordable and accessible, but I'm a professional and that's why I really need upgraded stuff. I have not used Google VO3, which is like $250 a month. We were just in a workshop where we're gonna get a year of Sora professional account. So I'm gonna play with that. But these aren't difficult films to make. If you dissect it piece by piece, you see that it's like one shot, then another shot, then another shot. There's no special effects, no, VFX, anything crazy. They're just sequence of shots told with a narrative arc, like a story arc. So I can make these films really fast, pretty quickly because I know how to use the tools, but I teach and you can learn this. It's not difficult to learn, right? Because you have ChatGPT that you can use for idea generation. You can use it for story structure. I always tell ChatGPT to follow the hero's journey story structure. That's an important part of storytelling, I think, is understanding story, first craft of storytelling. I ask it to give me suggestions for format or whatever. It's not difficult. It is expensive, especially when you're learning, if you try to go directly to the very expensive platforms. And that's why I teach first on my platform that is low cost, low barrier, just to get the foundation. Then when you're ready, you can upgrade and pay whatever. I pay for most of these AI platforms, the professional levels, because I'm generating so much for different projects and all of that. But you can, I can get into it more and more, but they're expensive. They're not, cheap. And actually one of the things we have discussions about in Africa with my partners is accessing or encouraging infrastructure on the African continent so that when there's data sovereignty, that data can stay about African users can stay in Africa, and also that it can be more affordable. I hope that answered your question.
Can I
Yeah, go. Follow up, yeah.
just a quick follow-up. The craft of storytelling. What are your 2 or 3 or 4 key takeaways? What are the key ingredients for a great story so it sticks?
Yeah, so I really studied story structure when I became an editor because I feel like that's really where the story kind of comes together. And for me as an editor, you have to have a strong climax. This is when I go shoot a documentary wherever I am in the world, I edit the climax of the film first before I edit anything else. So the climax, when we talk about climax in terms of storytelling, it's the most dramatic, the most gut-wrenching, the thing that is like the most, dramatic is the best word I can use. That, like I did a film with GE Healthcare and I shot in India, Kenya, and Indonesia. I knew the scene that I shot that was the most difficult scene for me to shoot was going to be my climax. So I start there and then I build up and I build the resolution. But what's important in a story? Strong characters. I think one of the weaknesses in the UN NGO storytelling world is the lack of character consistency, by telling the story through one character, like character driven versus being issue based, which is like a lot of different characters talking or saying, things, and then it's kind of, in my opinion, kind of flat. So knowing story structure, having strong characters, understanding the importance of creating the world around the person that you are telling the story about. So in this case, the woman who can't, go to her conference, her climate thing because she can't get a visa, the environment around that is, the limitations that she has as a young African activist, not able to get to the places that she needs. She has a dream with this griot inspires her, she finds music, that's her key. There's like a clear story structure to that. But a great way to learn storytelling structure is to study screenwriting. Like no visuals, because you have to put a story together using just text. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. So a couple of questions, which is something that I'm trying to. So one is that, of course, I look at this potential capability as to democratize storytelling, because then, as you say, low cost platform, easy entry, potentially possible for anyone if they're skilled quite a bit to be able to generate or build out film. To what extent was it easy in your case to generate the very specific African visions? That's your articles. Because I can see the film, right? The piano looks good, but then you can see the kind of African stuff. There's a very bit of a struggle. So what one, and you are professional, right? So I'm imagining if this was somebody somewhere else, maybe the ask is a little bit different. If it was a Western film, how quick will you generate this versus this African film?
It was a Western film.
Yes.
Yeah. So probably faster. Because I take storytelling very seriously. I believe in ethical storytelling, responsible storytelling. And I almost quit my job 3 times because I couldn't figure out how to do it ethically. Here I was parachuting into all these places that weren't my cultures, but I'm a woman filmmaker. I'm Asian American. I did not grow up in a privileged household whatsoever. So there's certain like ethical things. And I remember this man was dying of AIDS in Malawi, and he kept thanking me for visiting him. He kept thanking me, and I'm getting angry because it was during the Bush administration, and I was like, you're thanking me, and I'm an American, and the money for programs that could save your life are diminishing, and I represent that country, and my camera alone could probably cover the cost of your medicine for the rest of your life and put your granddaughters through school, and here you're thanking me, like, don't thank me. And so I feel that I'm in a unique position in that I'm not American, really. Like my horizon, my experiences are New York and the world. And so I feel that I'm privileged in that way. But I think that like I don't want to encourage Western people to make films about Africa if they had not done the internal work to understand power dynamics, white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialization, all of the systems that make this world unequal. And I feel that where I found peace as a filmmaker in the UN space is that I do systems change filmmaking. So I called out the US government in my film, the one who wouldn't stamp the visa, wouldn't accept it. That's my approach to storytelling. And then, this is a really more philosophical conversation I was not preparing to have. But
a little different, right? So,
Yeah.
for example, I'm really asking about the date.
okay, yes,
So that's really what I'm asking.
okay,
Right? Because in building the film, it would have been easier. And that's not very fun. Would it have been easier to build a Western film because there's already existing data and artifacts already recorded and
right.
available, versus building an African specific film where there's not enough data in the models reflecting African context, culture. So that's actually what I'm trying to draw, right? So it means if you're building a Western film, then you build it fast. If you're trying to build an African specific film, then ideally it will be a little longer, right? Because potential to prompt more. It's basically the bias in the model. Because we don't look at the bias in the model this way. We look at the bias in the model in the very obvious things. But in this film, because you remember initially when you prompt me, Johnny and Sora, around show me a CEO.
A CEO, yeah.
Yes,
it's a white-
I'll give you one.
Yes.
Right. So that's
Not
what
even a
I'm
white woman,
What
it's a
about
white dude.
white man,
Yes.
bad like me, right? I'm going. and so that's what I'm trying to say. So how this is the
Yes.
right. So at what point did you find this a problem? And what can you do? Right? Because of some part of my job is to data. At what point then do we need to start to emphasize on how do we start to push one of these data that is based on productivity, because the conversation around data is not the greatest. Yeah, no, it's very much on these other data.
Okay, I will answer this question, and then I would like for my panelists to jump in because I don't want to dominate this conversation. So one thing that I thought was funny, last week I was talking to ChatGPT about something, and it says, well, given that you're a powerful Black woman, I'm like, so I asked, I was like, you think I'm Black? You think I'm Black? And the ChatGPT said, well, based on your focus on African storytelling and cultural appropriation and this and that, yes, I assumed. I'm like, well, that's an honor, thank you, you know, and it said something else. But you're right, if you don't know how to prompt ChatGPT, the default outcomes are going to be biased in the way the world is biased. You're going to get white CEOs, you're going to get male humanitarian workers sitting amongst a bunch of African children. Yeah, it's very, the bias is so clear. But I would even say that's more of a reason why we need to get African creatives telling stories, because it's correcting the data. Like I built this platform, this AI art and storytelling platform, and has 100 apps. I built it with my partners in Africa, and we did stuff like African hairstyles or African migration patterns, African textiles. They're all wrong. Like you plug in, you know, give me a woman with Bantu knots. It's not Bantu knots. Give me Maasai textiles. It's not Maasai textiles. Like it's off. It will give me colorful patterns, but it's not true to the culture. But that's even why it's more important that the women, people of color, the global South, all of these under marginalized people get access to AI and feed it not just technical questions or technical stuff, but stories to ensure that AI is built in a responsible, culturally diverse manner. And that I'm gonna just stop talking because I feel like I'm talking too much. I would love to hear from you guys.
So based on what we've seen, what are you thinking? In terms of the WHO mindset or just your own personal
Well, I
story?
can speak on both.
No, yeah.
Do you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah.
Both my own experience in filmmaking and evolutions of technologies. And I didn't say I'm quite specialist in humanitarian issues because all my career I've done film on. I visited directed filming missions of about 50 countries, developing countries, a lot in Africa, by the way, and so I have always worked in this domain of stories on humanitarian issues, health issues, sustainable development. So your question is really key to me because this question on data and how AI will manage the data used for any film. So because of course the new job that you did, you said you took one day because of your experience. The new job is to prompt the AI, to prompt the engine about what kind of film we want, and to tell the engine, okay, these are the constraints, these are the rules we give to the engine, and the engine is going to fetch the data for making the web. To me, there are many questions, even as I speak as WHO. I read yesterday quite to revise what I could say to you. WHO has developed a lot of constraints so far on AI, and by the way, tomorrow at AI for Good, the WHO with ITU and with WIPO is going to present a new project on traditional medicine and AI, how AI would, so it's kind of weird bridge between things which are centuries old, like the traditional medicines and AI technology coming into that. So you'll discover, and I will discover myself as well more tomorrow. But the WHO has developed for the past 2-3 years a lot of guidance on how AI for health should be used. And one thing is key for the WHO and it's part of the scientific work. And the WHO's core mandate is to do scientific evidence research, to respect the authors, to make sure the authors are always credited in any publication. So it should apply to video making. So any image as a source, even if it's read by the AI is using the data. As you said, what about the data from Africa? It's a big question. And normally the rule in filmmaking is to credit any source. So especially when it's a creative source, or somebody building an image, or somebody building a music, or building any script. So these are the authorship aspects. And for the WHO, the authorship is important also, not simply to give a credit to the author, but because the author is accountable and should be responsible for what he or she says or publication. And that's where AI could be very dangerous, because if we don't know the source, if we don't know how AI has reconstructed the source, the sources, because then it's a combination of things, sources can become only one. Then what about the accountability? What about the responsibility if something is wrong with that? So you mentioned the pattern for tissue of an African dress, but that's not too much maybe a problem about if you work in the fashion work in Africa, then let's say the creation of a fashion model was used. But you have copyright on many things. And speaking of data from Africa, which is a good point, there's another thing that we can speak long about equity, about the access for the mentioned filmmakers in Africa to train and to use the AI tools. So this is a good initiative, I think, interesting initiatives. But I think there will be a gap on access to these tools between rich people and poorest people, even in one country. And also because of this copyright issue, how the data will not be remunerated, and all the people providing the sources will not receive the money they should have received. So normally in the filmmaking, you have all these processes which takes too long time. So to be very fast with AI, it's going to be maybe to kill many steps. So I was at the Animation Film Festival in June in Annecy, which is the biggest animation film festival in the world. And there were a couple of conferences on AI in animation film. And I asked one of the panelists, what about this question on copyright and tracing the sources? And the answer was yes, the engine should be able to do that, of course. But then it's another layer of data management, which would add more business, so more not business, but more work to the AI engine. And the more we ask to the AI engine, the more also we consume energy of the servers, and this is contributing to global warming. So we have to be aware also that any request we do to ChatGPT or any film we create with an AI is going to take a lot of energy to be made. So if we do just a small test or we use that for gadgets, we have to be aware how much we are going to. Anyway, that's another issue on the environmental aspects of all these technologies. There is many things that. As I said at the beginning, I have more questions than answers. So
I think that's true for all of us. Yeah, I have only a few reflections. And one, I mean, they're not quite positive yet. The positive one from hopefully. And coming back to your point, I think the only way for you to know that what you were mentioning about the pattern of the cloth or whatever is not the right one is because you experienced it live, because you know what it looks like. And that works anyway. So someone in Asia and Africa creating a film thinking I'm gonna set up the film in Paris or New York will have the same preconceived idea maybe, or the wrong vision of what Paris or New York looks like because she never has been there. So how do we balance that? Because if you don't have that physical interaction of having that knowledge firsthand, you'll make assumptions. And the assumptions can be really wrong. So if it's pattern on the cloth, it's a problem. It is a problem because you perpetuate wrong information at a very small level, but that's wrong information.
If they got that wrong.
Exactly.
What else do they have?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's you're just adding to just fueling the system. And how do you balance that? How do you make sure that what you're actually showing is the reality and not whether your conception of the reality, if ever you manage to have one, or whatever has been fueled through the system through a very Western development. And that's almost impossible to verify. So the risk is that at the end you produce stories or whatever, and then you spend more time verifying than creating.
Mm.
And it's a non-ending theater where, and that's the limit between trying to showcase something and between reality and fact. And so you should almost be able to say at the beginning, this is not real. So that you remove that kind of things to be able to, because if you don't have the way to verify it, and consumers, probably 99% of the people won't have maybe the will or the interest or the reflex to verify that. And we see it more and more. And then I can go more to the Humanitarian Federation thing. We used to already see fake videos circulating, and that was 15 years ago. There was no AI, there was like people generating things or arranging the truth so that it looks like whatever. Now anyone can do it. How do you verify the information? Like, and it's not just here. We're not talking about that it could do to the organization. We're talking about how it could do to people. Individuals could be putting them at risk. Yes, the reputation of an organization is a big thing, but if we're talking about how you put someone's life in danger because someone has decided that, as we were saying earlier, anyone can use those tools almost for free. You're not happy with your neighbor, start, I mean, exaggerating a little bit, but or you can start spreading rumors on like vaccination because you can do all the things. And if you don't have that exposure to the fact checking and making sure that what you're saying is not just you shouldn't take it firsthand and then take it for granted, it's difficult. And there's a lot of places everywhere, and I'm not talking south here, so even in the north, where people just take everything that comes their way, absorb it, and take it for granted. And there's a role on the people making the film, telling the stories to inform that and to make sure that we actually passing that information. And it's not just like almost in a biased way saying this is the story and enjoy it. We need to have that kind of little discussion with the viewers to have that, to educate constantly on what it is between fake and reality.
I mean, that's even happening now with real people. So you could only imagine it being amplified.
Well, you think they're
Well, no, I mean, I don't want to get into names, but we know people who perpetrate misinformation very loudly, right? And but most people will not take the time to authenticate that it's misinformation. I like this guy or this woman, I like what they say, so I agree with it, it fits in my worldview, so I'm gonna believe it and I'm gonna go with it. Because I don't have time to verify. I'm too busy with my family and my kids in my life, and I don't have time to go read, the latest annual report of somebody and figure out if they're doing this or doing that. Or, let me not do specific context, but you all know.
We are talking about.
No, I'm talking about many people. I'm not talking about one person. Just because I'm married doesn't mean I'm talking. I'm not. I'm thinking of many things. So my question is, we're in this world, in this comms world, in this film world. What do you guys? Those of you who, I don't know everybody's role here, but if you're not in that world, what are you seeing on your end as this content is overtaking your Instagrams and Facebooks and news feeds, and what are you thinking about it? What gives you what do you like about it? What do you not like about what's going on in your mind?
I'm going to answer you maybe with a little bit of a question.
Yeah.
If that's
Okay.
but it'll give you an idea of what I'm thinking. One of the things I really struggle with as a storyteller in the humanitarian space is how do we balance the amazing creative potential of AI, as you say you really pointed out very well, with this thing that we like to refer to as authenticity. Here at the IFRC, one of our core values is humanity. It's a principle, but also we pride ourselves in having people really in the communities at the local level. And we try to tell their stories and not necessarily just say our story. So I worry about this idea of our message, our brand, if you will, becoming diluted in some way or infected by the perception that we're creating stories that are artificial, if you want to use that word, that may be really in some ways closer to the truth because we're able to tell the story better, but they also might distort people's perceptions of us. And we also, as you say, we might get lazy and do some things that might stray from some real accurate reflection. So that's the kind of thing I'm struggling with. I worry about a time down the road where people's opinions and feelings about AI generated content changes and they may not see it so favorably. So those are things on my mind. I don't know if that is what you were looking for, but I'm very curious to see what you all think of that sort of concern.
I know from my end, I share that. I feel it. And certainly from somebody who's, I think all of us have been hired or done or participated in documentaries for many organizations. That's the trick there is how do you tell the real story in an authentic way without and cross all the I's and the T's and the dots and the organization needs you to do. And it can be really hard, it can be hindering. And it's because it opens you up to be very vulnerable as an organization when you do that. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong, but I know on my end, when I've done these things, filmed all over the world, it's usually, I don't know the right term, but you're only getting a small snapshot, right? Because of time, because of access, because of all of these things. So you're really just telling a very narrow story that highlights the thing that you're there to highlight. It's hard to tell grab a full picture of a story. I'm not sure if that, I think that's one part of it. I think we do need to enable more creators to just create. And I don't know if that can be done. I think the question is, can that be done internally or does it need to be done externally for them? I don't know. That's a question I even have myself. Because I don't know the answer. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm not sure if I would react on your questions exactly, but you will tell me if I'm right. With my experience of filming in different humanitarian situations in the world, when we go for filming, we have many constraints. Even if you're in your own country, like let's say an African filmmaker would film in his own country, but even when you travel, you have to travel somewhere where it's not easy to film. Then you have to have the consent of people. You have many constraints. So any filming is focusing on a few examples or few images. Now, but that's the reality. Then the images we bring back are really the truth. So it's not fake. It's a real report, a documentary film. Now, if an AI is able to scan all the filming done in, let's say, if I take an example of Gaza right now. If you imagine, I don't think it's the case, but imagine an AI would be able to scan all the images made in Gaza for the last year by any filming crew, Palestinian ones in the country where the international they were not able to go anyway. So then, would an AI be able to make a better documentary than any single filmmaker? Because the data collected would be stronger, and we could take any other example in humanitarian domain, whether it's health or agriculture development, whatever. And then we could say the prompt is well done, and maybe again back on the copyright issue that I raised before. Can we do that without paying all these guys? But then maybe we have a better choice of making a good documentary because we start from real images. Now, if AI is rebuilding the situation, making a kind of synthetic image out of a series of sources like that, then it's not anymore the reality. It's a virtual representation of this reality. So it's a very delicate question.
I want to say something real quick about that. So a lot of people say to me, you know, well, you're a documentary filmmaker. You're not supposed to have any bias when you are telling a story.
What?
The second you make an edit, a cut in a clip, you're inserting your bias. So that's why I also think being a storyteller has a big responsibility internally, like how you process the world or whatever. But I also think that maybe this is a good conversation to think about who the audience is and the reason for the storytelling. I personally am tired of institutional storytelling and journalism sometimes. To me, it just is like, it just feels the same. I like arts and artists and poets and musicians and people that add emotion to some of these stories that I think is important. And so maybe IFRC can't put their logo on this thing without maybe giving a disclaimer at the beginning of it that these views don't necessarily represent the organization or whatever. But I think the humanitarian world, definitely the climate world, needs rebooting of storytelling. I think the safe institutional storytelling is good for certain purposes, for donors, for boards, for the news or whatever. But I think the more thought-provoking, emotional, human-centric storytelling, we need more of that and more creativity to keep the attention. Because when we talk about climate storytelling, we are losing the narrative war to the big oil and climate deniers and everything because they have money. But if you train a huge like generation of young people to be really creative climate storytellers, we can offset that purely by numbers without having the money. So I maybe on the one side of it, I understand the institutional concerns, but maybe that's where you allow independence and you provide money and funding to keep independence independent. And you get both. You get the safe stuff, but you also get people who want to push the boundaries of storytelling a little bit that would end up possibly being in festivals or screening in other spaces. And you're, by nature of being more flexible, getting your message out to new audiences instead of the same kind of circle.
Just comment on that.
Yeah.
I'm the regular. So I had a couple of things. One, I agree with a couple of the sentiments, but I think the place where I kind of deviate a little bit is that if today I was to build a material film, even though I went to a camp and film, then passed it through an AI model, most likely it will turn the story into a very dominant kind of model of how that story has always been told. Doesn't matter
That's
what I
true.
did, right?
Yes.
So for example, the African girl in the flag, right? We always say that flag poses and that's Trevor Noah's joke. You got what I mean? So there's still potentially a challenge within which how the current models have been designed. The dominant ones, so whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whether it's DeepSeek, right? So maybe, and this is where I see the AI opportunity, is how do we ensure that a lot of the now the institutions, right? So there's a Red Cross and IFRC. Need to think about building, and we're talking about small models, right? So large language models are fine, but you need smaller models that are more context specific. So maybe that's why I see the opportunity, right? So how do we ensure that then we have those types of films that have been filmed in a way that are unbiased, right? So that data, that content, then that is what you start to open up to independent filmmakers. So that if they're building their films, then they're using those smaller models. So for me, that's the opportunity. And if this is something you guys can think about, right? Because then really it's about smaller models right now, right? So it's not about this generic general stuff that are picking data from everywhere else. And so already you're biased from my humanitarian lens, which is a good thing. Sometimes bias is actually not a bad thing. Then I think the third part then it means how do we then, beyond the filmmakers, start to train young people around influencing, around training models, right? So I'm looking at another stack, another layer here. We are just training people to do films.
Exactly. No.
We need to yes, we need to put them to start training.
Like use art and storytelling to grab their attention and then guide them into data science, whatever. I agree.
And that's a business. Anybody wants to do a business, I think there's money. There's money to be made there. There's money to be made there.
Yeah, just, I mean, quickly, I think there's a need to differentiate the fictional from the reality, just to make sure that that kind of limit is clearly defined. Once you've done that, you can be as creative as well, because you're not trying to fake it. You're just trying to be creative, and then yes, let's be creative and let's be as crazy as possible. Fully agree on the training, I think. And that I told you I was going to come to the meeting. It's my climax. We need to have, I mean, yes, we need to train people, but then after the means to be able to produce are limited. It's not, yes, you don't need to have $10,000 camera, or you can create things. I hope if you have a little bit of capacity and being trained. But that does open the opportunity for so many other people to balance those narratives. And I agree, probably not the big ones, we'll always lose, we never have the resources to balance them. To create those side ones that actually bias, whatever, fair enough. But the question is really how to influence so that we know what is real. And I don't think, I mean, that's very personal here, but nothing will ever replace me sitting in front of someone talking to that person. That emotional, personal, human connection will never, ever be replaced. But that's reality. That's one way of doing storytelling. And I think the step will be to propose, to say that storytelling is going to be AI. AI is going to be one way of opening you to creative ideas that you might not even not think about now, because probably we have no idea what is going to be there in 5 years for. But having that line being drawn clearly on between reality and whatever we want to call it. I don't want to call it fake, because it's not fake, it's another reality. Is for me the way to actually make sure that we don't blur the line between the two. The moment the lines are blurred, that's where you have fake news, that's where you have misinformation, that's where you have all these kind of things. We managed to do that, then you can be really creative.
Yeah, can I just say one quick thing because it's short? So the other thing about misinformation and deepfakes is that misinformation is a moving target. We are never going to stop or censor misinformation. It will evolve. And so I think the focus needs to be on finding ways to, governance or whatever, ensuring that we know, but also we need to invest more in like critical thinking and teaching people to be able to see and analyze and be able to question what it is, because people always, I'm sorry, be like, go to trusted sources. I'm like, I at this point do not know what trusted sources are. I don't trust my government. I trust TikTok more than the US government. I'm sorry. So it's like, it depends also on, life is not black or white. So information also can't be black and white. You infuse your own bias and your own experiences into how you absorb information. But I think that we lack critical thinking skills and the ability to kind of ask the questions we need to ask to determine, do I agree with this or do I not? In terms of, I do think they're trying to do like markings on different, AI generated stories and images so that you do know that it's not real. But I do think that it's just gonna evolve. People will find ways to get around it.
I understand correctly, this isn't visible to the eye, but in the metadata,
Yes.
you can tell
Yes.
1000% where something came from. And that's easy to find if you know it. It's very easy. There's many programs, you just enter it in and it'll tell you exactly what program it was made in, where it came from, when it was generated, all that stuff. So there are ways to authenticate in authentication.
Sorry, but who will be able to do that?
But who? Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's the issue, is that, we might.
And who will take the time?
I don't know if I will, but we might. But, probably 99% of the population of the world and across the world, not just one, again, I'm not talking one side. If you tell my parents, you need to go and authenticate the metadata, they are not gonna. I'll probably tell them, don't watch it. That's safer.
I would like to react again on your point on the institutional films and the aspects. So, first on the L4 Film Festival, for instance, is a tool created at the WHO, so that there's a goal also of bottom-up communication. So the stories are coming from the field, and it's open even to non-professional filmmakers. So we had a chance to give prizes to a group of nurses in Jordan who made a film about mental health for Syrian refugees. We gave prizes to many health workers or activists. So I have many stories which are really nice stories. A practitioner in Tahiti who created, because of our film festival, created a series of educational films in Tahiti, these kind of things. So it's another approach to the institutional production, to have more openness, to different variety of different ways to take stories in the field and for champions of health to do their films and to send it to the international level, thanks to our festival. Another example is at the UN, you speak about climate change, so I wanted to raise that. The UN Climate Change for Youth as a program with an NGO, where they created a world map where all the youth in the world can provide a story. They can send a story and then it's recorded on this world map and it's located. So these are initiatives as well, where the voice, giving a voice to the people in the field. So I think institutions have this power to create such things. But I agree with you that when it's purely institutional videos, frankly, I made a study on the WHO YouTube channel recently on the analytics, and the best success we have are in fact tutorials. Not really the institutional videos, but really the ones really giving practical advice to the audience about how we can treat any small problem or health issues they have. And it's interesting to see also that it's not necessarily the most fancy production, which are powerful.
But it has the most impact.
But yeah, it's when the content is strong, with as you say, the human dimension, with the testimony from somebody, from a patient, or from, and of course with something to learn. So hopefully the audience is looking for this kind of stories, and I think that's the institutions should develop more on this.
And at one point, I forget when it was, but the #1 video on YouTube was how to tie a tie. And I was like, that's the secret for being a content creator on YouTube, is teaching how to.
Yes,
the how to.
that's the most popular videos, how to.
Yeah.
So indeed.
I didn't watch that video.
How come?
There we go.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I have a lot of reflections, but I'm going to keep this as short as I possibly can. So for your first video, my question is, or I'm going to assume that the audio or the voiceover was done by 11 Labs or something like that, or was it?
Yeah, it was Teacher.
So
I'm a content creator as well. And one of the things that I've noticed, over time, since AI has come to my workflow, it was impressive 2 years ago when you prompted for AI to generate a nice image or photograph or whatever. And at the time, the pro version of ChatGPT was $20 or something like that, where you actually, really get creative.
Yeah.
So that door was closed.
Yeah.
We'll fast forward to today, right? One, the images are 100 times better.
Yeah.
Right? There's no video generation, right? All the things that I don't think we paid attention to a lot is the audio side.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Not even 2 years ago, I would say up to 6 months ago, it's a test that I will run through ChatGPT very regularly. I'm from a little island in the Caribbean called Geneva. Right? We have a dialect of Patois there. And I would prompt ChatGPT and I'd set up a GPT and ask it, communicate to me in Patois. Right? And 6 months ago, I would try, and it was awful. And I said, don't ever do that. Or come back when you've gotten better. Okay?
Yeah.
Tried it about 2 weeks. And over time, it looks like it's been trained off of radio personalities. So it's,
Oh, interesting.
it's very.
Just to find the system, that's all.
It's very fruity, but it's getting right. It sounds like patois. I know what it is. I could play it to a friend that send us a joke or whatever it is, and they would get it. Now the thing for it is that everything AI does, as we see it today, as it's presented today, is the worst it will be, right? And it's only getting better and better and better. Now, part of this conversation that I really love is that, we're talking about how we can ethically present stuff, right? That may not be real, right? Or isn't real. My question is when it starts to become almost indistinguishable from reality.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about putting guardrails on, like, checking metadata and these sorts of things. I can fudge metadata. I can go into metadata and change it. Yeah. So that another professional can look at it and say, oh, it's verified to be true, or whatever it is. So I think the bigger conversation for us to be having would be to speak to the metas and the Instagrams of the world, right? And saying, we're going to need you to program your AI, right? Actually help us to distinguish what is true or not, because after a while, someone else will be able to see. So, yeah. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, I'm glad you said that. And, one of the UN has like consultations around AI governance. Very few creatives I feel or I see are in those rooms. So I'm happy to give you my card, and I would love to, anybody who works in communications or filmmaking or art or whatever, I think should engage in them, because these are important elements. And sometimes I feel the image video generation community aren't looked at as part of the serious conversation around AI ethics and AI governance. So yeah, you brought up a good point. And yeah, you're right. These corporations, the ownership or the responsibility should probably be on their shoulders, I think.
On this point, yeah, I think there's the specialists, of course, we need to study that, but there's a huge competition, and that's why we have all these debates about AI, because there's so much money invested, especially. So I asked a question at the Animation International Film Festival to the panelists as well about competition between countries, let's say between Europe and USA and others. And they told me even inside USA, there's a huge competition between companies. And so, question of this competition regarding the laws, because there's no international law about how AI should be managed so far. So who is going to decide on any international law or even national ones when we know that there are so many big lobbies trying to have the law at their advantage? So I don't know if it's the lobby of the one who owns the data, the one who manages the data, or the lobby of the creators who create the data, but they are not necessarily owning their own creation. And there are lobbies of those who distribute the films. who maybe they don't create anything, but they control the pipelines. So there are all these lobbies and many more certainly, which are competing as well in terms of legal constraints they could have. So that's where also we are. I think if you know any of you more about that, but I think it's another big question about all what we raised today will depend from this kind of legal framework, which will appear or not one day.
I can.
Yeah, please. Yeah, if you know more on that.
Sort of global governance, like something.
Yeah.
And yes, we're close. Then I have to jump out. So I think a couple of things. In this one, for sure, we have had a conversation, at least at the level of global governance, whether it's it was the composition of the GTC, but also the conversation I'm having with the technology firms themselves. Especially the issue around watermarking. And so watermarking one is that if an image is generated from a certain platform, then they have to say that it's AI generated. So that's a conversation that's quite advanced. And the issue for us was the portability of the generated content. Right. So what happens when it's generated is from platform A, but then it's ported to platform B. So that's where the issue is right now. Because I can generate it on this, I don't want to brand anybody. You can generate it from this one, then quickly it can be moved on to the another. So we need to retain the watermarking. The second thing, of course, is responsibility, right? So which platform will take responsibility of the harms of that content? If it was generated in platform A, then quickly move to B, and that's where it breaks down. So that's what the conversation is right now, and we're trying to streamline that. But I think if you look at the studios, for the unions, for example, in California, I think they've been very good at, for example, having these discussions around. I know there's, for example, an artist who sued one of the platforms for using her voice, right? But also because it's a very strong union, right? So, and that is my point. So how do we bring in these real world gadgets, the institutions that we are leaving out of this AI conversation, because we think it is a technology conversation, to start also getting into this terrain. The WIPO is engineering, right? So how do we start to bring this in so that they can give us where do we go? I think WIPO is a good place to. Right? There's the big unions that are dealing with the studios in California and have been part of following that discussion. That's an interesting thing. The problem is they're only negotiating for themselves. How do we globalize that so that you're protecting global? I can go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's never going to be one solution. I think the governance issue and the legal part of it is key. But it's going to take years, and because the whole technology evolves so fast, by the time there's an actual governance with some legal framework around it, so I don't think Congress to be pessimistic or cynical of it. There's responsibilities for platforms, sure, but if we are waiting for that, I think we fail. What you were saying about critical thinking, educating people to think and to be critical when they're looking at something. And I come back to what I was saying, my intro, saying at the early stage of CGI, we were looking, not the same time, not the same thing clearly, but we're looking at making sure that what we're doing is unseen, that you think it's real as much as possible, and successfully or not sometimes, but that was the aim, right? And then people started to have some critical thinking of that can be real, that's we need to develop that, and it's going to become, it's difficult, but I think it's of everybody's responsibility individually, because you sit with your child and you say you can look at something and have this kind of like, it doesn't have to be technical, but have that little thinking, and education. If we don't do all that together, the governance, the legal, but also the critical thinking. Again, as I was saying earlier, people will just be there and watch the screen, swallow everything that comes without thinking, what am I watching? What is the message? Is it real? Is it not real? And if we don't have that, then you can have all the governments in the world, they'll still swallow it as this is real.
Very good. So we're gonna wrap up with just some final thoughts, and then we'll have some time to interact and have questions or whatever you want to say. So who would like to, we'll just go this way, Lisa. We'll start.
Yeah, that caught me off guard a little bit. So, I
It's
am
my job.
I am really interested in creating thematic workshops like around climate or this or that or whatever. If any of you all are interested in talking to me about that, please do. And I guess my last thought is, I'm a big advocate for artist representation. And I would say if any of you have the ability or privilege of being in spaces where AI art and storytelling is being discussed, ensure that people who are actually practitioners are sitting at the table and helping to create the policies, the programs, the campaigns, because we have a very important part of that discussion that doesn't always get heard in the UN space, at least, in my opinion. And because of that, there have been harmful policies, unintended harmful policies, but policies that hurt creatives. So.
Okay, so to conclude, not easy, but so as I said at the beginning, my major interest is on health education with film and health promotion and awareness, how film can help to make behavior change for better health of people. So if anybody is interested by that, happy to continue the discussion on that, whether with AI or not. And on AI specifically, I think we raise a number of aspects. We didn't discuss too much about the fact that many people might lose their job in the audiovisual production context, whether it's on translation, languages, voiceovers, dubbing, and even video editing and everything. So it's a big challenge ahead for the sector of the audiovisual production. And to speak about the human dimension, I think it's important that we are all aware that we should keep the human control on the engine, and that creativity, the fact checking, and all these things we raise, we should always be on alert to make sure that we control the evolution of those engines, and not vice versa. They would control us or make us being not aware of the realities. So that's what I would say as a
Agreed with all the points. For me, the way I see it is, let's use it for what it is at the moment, right now, what it can bring. If I look at me in this organization, what can I do with it, with what it can offer now? I'm not going to predict what it is in 5 years. This is absolutely right. But I know that if I want to create a bit like, the first movie, for instance, we're showing them, I can't do that. I have zero budget to do that. Doesn't really exist. So, but it's still storytelling, it's still passing message, still a way to say something. So why not? That's is it going to replace me going to do an interview somewhere in the world to people that we helped? No. So I see it as a compliment. And maybe when they will replace it, I have no idea. But for now, I really want to kind of try to see where I can use it so that adds to whatever we can already do. So we can tell different stories or different way of doing it. But I don't see it as a competition.
I like the idea that you said it's a compliment. I like that. Because I feel the same way that nothing, when it comes back to authenticity, if I'm in the room, if I'm in the person's house filming them and telling their story, I got it. I was there. I know this is what they said, and I experienced it, and I lived it, and for that hour, that day, this was real. This is the guy's house. This is life, his children, this is what he does, this is his job, I didn't make it up, right? I can see where he got treated for whatever, and I think that's a great way to think of it, is we can create great complementary pieces to just help enrich those stories in more creative and abstract ways that maybe align better with the audience of today. And then for me, I think my biggest excitement and last thoughts is, just as a storyteller, it's fantastic. If I can just shut off some of the hard questions that we have, it's such a fantastic to be able to think that the stories that I've had locked inside of me for so long, I can get them out for way less than I could have ever done, and tweak it to exactly what I see and what I feel, and really get that message across. I really do feel that when it comes to the job thing, I think it's going to be like anything. It's a tool, and the better you use it, you'll have a job. And if this is my message to like filmmakers, right, or other artists, you've got to use you've got to figure it out. It's not. We went to this workshop today, and I saw very clearly that you really have to understand creativity. You really have to understand storytelling. You have to know those things to get that out of it. You can prompt it to do anything, and it'll kick out something, but it might not be like the story has to be there first. So I'm a big advocate of learning story, as Lisa said at the beginning. And I think that is, when I study AI, what I learn is it teaches us more about our humanity and how complex and how amazing human, and how it's just hard to replicate because we're cool. That's it. And we should keep our coolness at the front. So I think that's what we've got, and I appreciate you guys for coming. I appreciate the people online. Thank you for taking your time. You guys are awesome, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you to IFRC.
Thank you to IFRC and Sophia and Helena. We would not be here without her right there. So thank you. Yes, this is okay. Okay, thank you, everybody.